personnel who are being paid, responding, and out of service during that time. And I think that's an important point. It's one of the things that I believe persuaded several of the folks, which leads me to my next point. Mr. Swadesh made the point, and someone else made the point that one of the members of the committee was quick to say, hey, this is clear to me, this is what we need to do. I thought it was pretty outspoken. It's his right to say it. I wasn't comfortable saying that early in the process, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. But what I remember is as soon as he made that statement, between Bill and John, they were pretty quick to say, hey, wait a minute. They were actually frustrated and angered by that comment because they came in with a completely different attitude.
And I think I don't want to interrupt you, but I think that that's very important to note. And while a resident's right, somebody did say that, what wasn't said is that two of us immediately indicated that's not why we were there.
And frankly, you didn't believe that in any way.
Right.
I mean, but the reaction was, it was a little touchy. There was a statement made earlier, if you want to have more firefighters, no problem. Reduce the cost of each, you can have more. In essence, that's what we're talking about. In a short term, we'd like to get back to 27. But long term, through tiered benefits, we believe we've done that. We've reduced the cost to put a firefighter on staff. And over a period of time, as we realize those savings, we're in a position to be able to increase that staffing based on a similar volume of money. And for whatever it's worth, in response to one of the comments that one of the firefighters made regarding expenses, I certainly can't speak to whether the chief shields me from everything, but the chief is pretty regularly telling me about expenses that we have, specifically turnout gear. We've talked about air packs. Those are two that come to mind. I know the heart monitors he's talked about, but I put myself in the chief's shoes. It's difficult to come when you say, well, all right, well, already 100,000 in the hole. Hey, great, I got an expense you didn't know about. And that's what we've been doing for the past several years. If we experience a 20% loss in taxable value, we can't possibly expect that the same millage rate is going to continue to provide the same level of funding and the same level of service. Are there any other comments?
I do have one.
Okay.
Once again, I think if your thesis is that you're gonna give people a choice, which is what I've heard from the committee, I said it in the workshop, I heard it, you said it, I think you need to split that out, but whatever. If you wanna keep it all one, that's fine.
Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none? Oh,
I
sorry.
think I'd like to see it split out as well,
How would it be split out?
police and fire.
Okay.
Well,
So two separate
Police,
questions.
yes.
All right. Well, we have not done that in the past. I don't think the question here is police. I don't think people are gonna say, so let's say this. A no vote would not suggest to me that the residents are saying, hey, the increase of .0025 on the police is offensive to me, and therefore my no vote is because you've got a number on the police. So if this millage fails, will there be any member here who says, you know what, we've got to lower the police millage? Clearly, the voters are upset with the police millage. So to me, and in thinking about this prior, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but if this board is hesitant about this millage question, tell me that it isn't because of the police millage rate.
So this is my thought process, and I'll just say this again. If you do the 5.5 plus the police, and then you add on whatever your additional 0.7 or 0.8, whatever it is, okay? At least you're hedging a bet that you have money, because you could get into and I don't know what the vote is going to happen, but you do end up possibly getting into a situation where 8.2 fails, then you go in for 7.9, it fails, then it goes, that's what happened prior to 2004. We ended up with 4 or 5 elections that the millage actually failed in a row. So my point is somewhat conservative. At least you have some money. If you have to go back in, and ask for an additional 0.7 or whatever it is, 0.8, let's just assume it's 0.8, I don't know the numbers. If the additional 0.8, the citizens say no to 30 men or whatever, then you can come back later at the next election. At least you have the 5.5, and then come in at, whatever, an additional half a mil.
Right.
That's all I'm saying, just
Understood.
hedging a bet.
Right.
Because I certainly don't want to get into a situation, and I think everybody knows I'm gonna vote on this, but at the same time, I don't want to see you go into March. Oh, people vote no. Maybe they vote yes, I don't know. But if they're gonna vote yes at 8.2 in March, they'll certainly vote yes for 5.5 plus additional millage, if that's the way they were gonna vote,
Understood.
right?
Right.
Then you get into July, you know, maybe you do an additional half, I don't know. But you do run the risk, I'm telling you, of going into March losing, July losing, and then getting backed up against the wall in November, possibly, because I don't know what that number is. I don't know what we haven't gone out for other than that $500,000 temporary for 3 years, which was really an easy sell, right? It's $20 for 3 years, who cares, right? That's an easy sell.
I don't
The-
believe that
The big
separating-
number is going to make people look. I'm telling you, that 8.2 number is gonna scare people.
Well, hang on, so,
That's just my,
I get you.
and I'm not gonna say.
All right, well, there's two issues. One was the issue of separating police and fire, the other was asking for 5.5.
So-
I explained at least the reason why I
No,
hadn't
and-
proposed a separate police and fire,
And I
but I'd like to
understand.
address the 5.5. Asking for why not ask for 4.5? Why not ask for 3.5? The concern I have with 5.5 is I have 5.5 now. I'm
You've already
100,000.
You don't have to run through it again.
Well, okay, so why
Don't
would
run
I
through it
ask the
again, Ken.
question for
I
5.5?
I get that whole, I've heard it 4 times tonight.
Okay,
All I'm saying is you run the risk that if you don't get in March, now you go into July with 8 mils and you don't get it, and then you're in November at 7.8, and let's say it doesn't go, now you got your back against the wall and you're doing a PA 33. That's all I'm suggesting.
gotcha.
If you want to give people a choice, separate a little bit of it out if they want the extra men.
I don't
I'm
think
sorry,
separating the
Mr. Brown.
police from the fire is gonna hurt the fire funding.
Correct.
I think we should separate it.
See,
I don't think it's gonna hurt the.
But then when we do a third question for 0 for general fund, I mean, we have 3 questions
You
significant.
don't need anything for general.
Don't-
But it's no longer a renewal. Basically, what we're saying is we're using, let me say this.
Renewal,
Okay. What language we have in the resolution is a question saying this much, we're using existing language for this much for police, this much for fire, and this much for general. So we're using the same language that we've used in prior questions. And my point is I'm merely asking, so, because on its face, I'm not offended by the concept of asking 2 separate questions. There's a need to, hold on a minute, please. There's a need to ask Mr. Huth, what that wording would be. But my question to you is I'm trying to understand what changes by separating the police and fire. If somebody's voting no, they're voting no. We'll be forced to come back with that question. If this fails, I'm not gonna come back with less than 1.65 for police.
Right.
I'm gonna be
And-
looking
and
at a
I-
different
and I-
number for
And I
fire.
understand that, and I understand that's why you're saying you didn't separate it originally.
Right.
Because the 1.65, it is what it is.
It's almost like identical.
Right, and that's what they're charging us, so we're not proposing more. So I get it.
Right.
But,
Which is
My-
no different than what we've done in the
right,
past.
no,
Right.
I understand that, but, again,
So my point is I'm trying to understand, I'm asking each of you, because I'm not trying to convince you, I'm asking you to convince me, what do I gain by separating those 2 questions? I'm not fearful, we're not sitting here saying, is a renewal of the police millage going to pass? So changing the language and complicating how we voted in the past when we've asked for 1 millage question, to me, I don't know what I gain. Basically, if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't pass, what are we gonna do about it?
so we talked about the language. I think the language, if we're gonna keep it as one question, should clarify, or accomplish, otherwise going to 2 questions. Because it should say for police, 1.65 going to from 1.65 to 1.65.
Yeah, I think we're at 1.6465.
So I get it,
6-1.
I understand
So,
it.
so instead of 2 questions, that clarifies it as,
And that's what we had spoke about earlier
Right,
was
and
Mr.
that's
Hood
why I
was gonna add
propose
that
that, because people need to understand that.
So the ballot language would identify what millage rate was going to which department, which organization.
As well as, per Mr. Tominello's request, and I
What
think
it
it's
was
valid,
coming from.
what it used to be.
What,
Coming
from,
from
to.
Oh, I
Right.
got you, I thought you meant where, I
With this much,
got
I
you.
agree. It's good.
The police currently is 1.614.
With the rollback.
That's what I charge this year.
Well, understood, right, but prior to that, the millage that the voters approved was 1.6465.
I have the resolution here somewhere. Doesn't matter.
Okay, well, it's close enough, I mean, if you're talking,
It's not a renewal.
No, but I mean, it's
Well,
.0035 mils greater. If it makes anybody more comfortable, we can make it 1.6465, and it's truly a police renewal. I mean, it'll generate $1.50 more for the fire department. The .0065 is really not the question. If it's satisfying language for this board to say 1.6465 is the rate we had, and that's what we're asking the voters to approve, I mean, I can do the math real quick, but .0035 mils is not a lot of money.
But again, the point that it should be 1.65 is based off of, what I've heard tonight is you can't drain the general fund. You can't do that. You have to get the right millage to fund for the service.
Understood.
So when we look at the police, we've been putting in 10 grand, 15 grand. The amount that you're talking about rounding off is what's been going from general over to cover a shortage based on changes in the contract. So if we said, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's $3,000.
Right, but
Okay, $3,000 is, I mean, we'll get more variation in the revenue from 41B than $3,000. So again, if there's any comfort in saying, well, the police is a direct renewal within that point, and then any increase that you see in this is wholly on the fire side, 1.6465 is the number. So, I mean, truly, $3,000 is not good. We don't even know what the taxable value is in 17.
okay.
You still can't call it a-
shouldn't see enough
a renewal.
language.
Yeah, it's not. a
No,
renewal.
I'm not saying it's a renewal.
There's
No, but
nothing
you-
I'm
renewal
saying
about
this,
8.2
Mr.
mils.
Tominello's point of saying 1.6465 for police, currently at 1.6465.
I don't
But it wouldn't be. But it wouldn't be that. It'd be the rolled back number based on Headley.
So we need to see the language, but I get it.
It's going to be 6.35 and 1.65. Same question.
Yeah, $3,000 is right. It's not a big deal.
My point was separate out something extra for whatever that
I
piece was for
understand.
the extra people.
Right, and
Not necessarily the police,
Right.
but that extra, and I don't even know where you're gonna spend the extra $800,000. We haven't talked about that, but, we talk about that Darren, yell at Darren for, we don't have enough money, but we didn't hear like we're gonna spend $300,000 for OPEB and $400,000. Because, for example, I was at the fire pension, I said, quite honestly, I mentioned to them, instead of hiring 3 people, we'd probably be better served in the community, better served taking that $500,000 and dropping it in pension to shore that up, just as an example. But we're not, talking about that, we're just,
I mean, it was pretty extensively talked about where that money would go when we had the workshop, and I know they talked about it a bunch as they went through that
Well-
fire services committee. So to say, and I don't want to
No, I
vote and be
understand,
done,
but
but
as
you're
a-
being disingenuous when you make comments like that
I
that
disagree,
are half
Adam.
truths and you have no backup for it.
I disagree,
Because
there's
when we were in a
nothing
meeting-
half-truth about that,
It
Adam.
is. You
Come
said
on.
there's no plan for that
Come
money.
on,
That's
Adam.
deceiving to the voters.
Come on, Adam, that's not deceiving at all.
It is exceptionally
That is
deceiving.
not
I mean,
deceiving at all.
you are
Do you have a
lying.
plan here? Let me ask you, is there a plan here for the extra $800,000? Yes or no?
what do we
There
do
was
with the
a-
extra
yes or no?
$800,000?
That's
Yes or
not the
no?
question, Darren. The
Yes or no?
question
You
was
said
it
I
ever
asking-
discussed?
No,
So
what
I'm
are
just-
you
I'm
referring
asking-
to about
I'm
the
just asking a
800,000?
question. You say that we're gonna do this OPEB and this and that.
Yeah.
But yet you don't put it in writing here. We're supposed to go to some meeting and listen to people, and then I'm gonna say that I was at this meeting, and I'm gonna say what I heard, and yet you and Ken are gonna say, Darren, you're a liar, you never heard it. That's the way it goes. So if it's not here in writing,
It's
then
on
it
the
didn't
second
happen.
page. It's right here. This spells out what all the additional costs are. An
I
equipment
get it,
reserve of 100,000, OPEB contribution of 200,000. Cost for dispatch is estimated at 60,000. And we have a deficit to
Save
plug.
this sheet.
It goes in the permanent record of the township clerk.
It's in your board packet.
Save that sheet.
Yeah.
Just vote, go ahead.
All right, I'm trying.
Just see us getting in a situation where we end up with 2 or 3, hopefully this passes. If it doesn't, could be a long road, boys.
Any other board comment? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. Brado to adopt a resolution placing the 2-year millage question on the ballot for the March 8th, 2016 election, asking for 6.35 mils for fire services and 1.65 mils for police services. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
No.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkowski?
Yes, thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is regarding a coastal zone management grant. Board members, in 2013, we were awarded a coastal zone management grant to create a waterfront redevelopment plan, which then led to the formation of the Downtown Development Authority and adoption of a tax increment finance plan. There is another round of coastal zone management grant funds available. The DEQ representative who administered the last grant specifically encouraged us to apply for another grant. Wade Trim was the firm that administered, I guess you'd say, or performed the work under the last grant, and Pat Maher, who is our current township planner, have worked together to develop a proposal for a grant application. Amanda Oparka, who is employed currently with Clinton River Watershed Council, but she's also the DDA Board Secretary and a resident. She has experience with grant applications through her current position with the Watershed Council. She's drafting a grant application. The proposed application would fund a zoning overlay for the district, as well as a complete streets plan for the district and a developer's guide. The projected cost is $25,000, with the grant covering 50%. It's also important to note the minimum amount that the coastal zone management grant can be given. The minimum amount of a grant is $10,000, so it has to be at least a $20,000 project. So we're proposing a $25,000 total cost of project, half of that coming from the grant. Macomb County has pledged $3,000 of in-kind services. That would reduce the match to $9,500. If we administer that grant, there's the potential that we could reduce that a little bit further with in-kind services. The TIF district will capture more than that by October 1st of 2016, which is the project start date per the grant. The application is due before the end of the year. We would know something in the springtime. We'd have a chance to ultimately accept the grant at that point, and we can't begin to work on the grant and spend any funds prior to October 1st of 2016. But one of the requirements is the local municipal body is encouraged as a part of the grant application to pass a resolution approving the submission of the coastal zone management grant application. If we were to get this grant, we would presumably be back before the board. The DDA would have to ask for a revision to their funds to be able to spend money from the DDA toward this. They'd have to submit a budget amendment. This board would have to approve that. So the ultimate ability to accept this grant still rests with the board, but we believe it's a worthwhile thing to pursue to encourage development and investment within the DDA. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the attached resolution.
So through all that, I heard the DDA was paying for this, yes or no?
The DDA can pay for this. They have the funds. If they come to the board to ask that, this board has to approve that budget amendment, because at this point,
But
we
that's,
haven't.
that's the intent of the DDA.
That's the
is to
intent.
pay.
Yeah, and this board could pay for it, but the DDA is applying for it with the anticipation they'd use their own
It's really a
funds.
yes or no.
Well,
I mean-
but I mean, the board
I
could
mean,
say, no, we don't want to.
You sit on the DDA, so I'm not there,
But
I'm in that
I think,
discussion.
I think
They-
Ken's
they-
point stems back to some of the conversation we had during the establishment of it, was that the DDA is restricted in their expenditure of funds without budget amendments from this board.
Right. The answer is the DDA board would like to do it, but they don't possess that singular authority. The Board of Trustees approves their budget. So it would take a cooperation of the DDA board and the Board of Trustees. But I've said right in here that they'll capture more than that. They can afford that. They have the funds available by October 1st.
But if they choose not to pay that, then the township board will pay, correct?
Even if they
It's
choose
just
to.
a yes or no.
No, it's not a yes or no. Even if they chose to support it and this board didn't approve that expense, yes, they would have to come to you. They come to you and say, we want to do this. You still have the right of refusal. If they don't come to you and they don't have the money, you still have the right of refusal.
The intent is they would like to do this. We have to approve that they could do this.
Thank you. In 5 seconds, thank
I'll make
you.
a motion to approve the attached resolution approving submission of a coastal zone management grant application for zoning overlay, complete streets plan and developer's guide for the Pure Place DDA district.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Brado, with support by Mr. Tominello. Is there discussion?
Yes, so a developer's guide and, you know, if the township board's paying for this, I'm voting no. But if the DDA is, cause you know what, I am sick and tired of a whole drawer full of studies that we've paid for just because we're getting a grant and they just sit in the drawer.
It's my understanding that, that it's the intent of the DDA to pay for this,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. I agree.
And if it were to come time and the DDA did not have the funds, the Board of Trustees could simply
Absolutely.
refuse to go ahead with the project.
You could refuse if we did have the funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, cause I'm not gonna spend $10,000 of the township money in the DDA district.
You've made that clear. Are there any further comments? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call? Oh,
Mr.
I had it set up
I
for
might
5.
encourage you to utilize the on-deck chair, Mr.
Well, you were
Senseth.
talking in the middle of it, and all of a sudden, there's nothing. Well, there was. The projected cost is $25,000, and the people that are gonna do that is Mr. Mahar and Mr. Newmer from Wade Trim. And what we're gonna get is a complete streets design plan. There's only 2 or 3 streets in the whole DDA. Oh, well, okay, maybe there's something else we can do. The developer's guide brochure would be a visually attractive and informative document with a combination of text, graphics, tables, and charts. When completed, the brochure would be heavily promoted by the township and DDA. In other words, it's an advertising campaign. It's a little advertising brochure. We're gonna spend $25,000. Well, wait a minute, we get the government will come through and give us some of it. And, oh, they'll put Macomb County will put $3,500 in it. This ain't worth $25,000. No way, no how. And if these guys had to go out on a competitive bid basis and show what they were gonna do for this money, you'd get it a lot cheaper. But, oh wait, it's a government grant, we're only gonna put up part of it. It's not our money, we'll just waste it. I'm sick and tired, as Mr. York stated. We're sick and tired of getting these plans. Well, this study on the garage doors over on the fire department, or the heating system on the fire department, or this study, that study. 10,000 here, 20,000 there, whatever. The fact of the matter is, you guys aren't pushing these guys. When he came in, Mr. Newmer and Mr. Maher said they were gonna do this. First off, they wouldn't be coming to me at the last meeting of the year with no other meetings to talk about it. They'd have had this in a lot longer than that. And they'd have said, okay, we're proposing to do this, and I'd say, okay, show me what you're gonna do. Show me how you're gonna do it. Show me the amount of hours you're gonna put into it. Because if you don't, I'm not gonna buy it. But no, you guys don't care. After all, it's somebody else's money. That's what we're complaining about. That's what I'm complaining about, and I don't think I'm that far out in left field. You know, I did a lot of this type of work for a living. I know what these guys charge, and I know how they come to it. And if you don't push them, you're gonna be stuck paying for it that way. $25,000 for a brochure and a street plan that includes 3 streets? Are you guys crazy?
Thank you.
There's only 3 streets.
Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Is there any board comment?
Well, I can tell you, I worked in the advertising industry for my whole life. And a big percentage of that, and I can assure you, $25,000 is gonna cover printing, right? It's gonna cover design, it's gonna cover research, it's gonna cover a lot more than, plus the 3 streets, 2 or 3 streets, or I'm sure there's more than that, but the few streets that are in there, it's not out of line.
Well, and
And
I
I can tell
think,
you, and let me say one more thing. I made the motion, but I don't wanna pay for it. I want the DDA to pay for it.
Correct.
So, but I don't think that $25,000 is out of line.
Well, and I think what we've left out is the single biggest feature of this, and the one that we've been in pursuit of, and the one that was discussed before we even formed the DDA, was a zoning overlay. Because
Right.
if we want to encourage the type of development that's gonna lead to a walkable district, we can't simply expect our current zoning ordinances to apply to that district and achieve that level. So when you have a zoning overlay and you're able to put in the kinds of features that attract a developer, you, in essence, create added value to existing property and an incentive to invest in that. And this is not unique to us. This has happened in other communities. Patrick brought in references from other communities when he showed us what this would look like, projects that he's worked on, so.
But I'll say this, welcome to the new normal for 2016, because this is gonna continue until November, what is it, 20th?
Yeah, well, something,
We buy a box of pencils, we're gonna have people screaming at the podium.
maybe
It's
so.
normal.
Any other board comment? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Brada with support by Mr. Tominello to approve the attached resolution approving the submission of a coastal zone management grant application for the zoning overlay, complete streets plan, and developer's guide for the Pier Place DDA district. Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Brado,
Yes.
Mr. Tominello.
Yes.
Mr. Batati.
Yes.
Mr. Capro.
Yes.
Mr. York.
No,
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkest.
Yes. All right.
I can't believe the DDA would spend like $12,000 of their first 2-year money on that.
We'll open up the
That
floor for
seems
public
like a
comments.
waste of money to me.
William Bardell, 18-year resident. I just want to remind everybody, if they haven't already, gone to SaveLakeSt. or Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook to try to do that. And I just want to remind everyone, there were 60 beach closings out here at the beach this year. And what you may hear, and what as you go around or you go to the supermarket and you talk to people, you're going to hear a lot of half-truths about rainwater runoff and so forth. And the point that I would like to make is that these municipalities still get permits to dump into Lake St. Clair. And I would like everybody to check out the facts on lakestclair.org and look at the facts. These municipalities are getting permits to dump sewage into Lake St. Clair because the infrastructure is from the 50s. And speaking of water, I want to remind everybody during the Christmas holiday to, if you have a real Christmas tree, to keep water in your Christmas tree, and check your batteries and your smoke detectors. And I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
And put your hoverboard in the garage. Away from a flammable material.
Matt Czar, Harrison Township Firefighters, Local 1737. My time ran out, and I just wanted to mention a few things that were brought up when I spoke last. Number one, I wanted to thank the board for supporting that motion and letting the residents decide on that. The fire department will actively participate and help and get that passed. There was a couple other comments that were made from residents, and I think that they meant well in regards to MedStar Ambulance. The MedStar Ambulance, one, you'll get no argument from me. I believe that fire-based EMS is absolutely the way to go across the board. That's why 23 out of 30 communities that have full-time departments in Macomb and Oakland County, they do it. Transporting, 23 out of 30. And if you want to back that number even more, out of the 30 full-time fire departments in Macomb County, 29 of them provide ALS. So those are good things, and I just want to say that fire-based EMS is absolutely near and dear to us, and it's definitely provides a better service than our counterparts at MedStar. However, MedStar does do a good job, and they work with what they're given. But again, we are solely in favor of fire-based EMS. A comment was made earlier about the fire department not helping or participating. Kind of brought up a good point. This past Saturday, we had our Donuts with Santa. It was our 12th annual Donuts with Santa. If you're not familiar with that, the fire department takes on 30 families, and through help through the community, we're able to provide for them some gifts for them and their families. If anybody still would like to help out with that, we still have a tree at Station 1, and we still have some families available, and we'd appreciate any help with that. The last comment would be in regards to fire departments and running on EMS and less fires. Interesting study just came out from the FDNY. 5% of all their runs that they run on are fire-related. It's national, it's across the board. It doesn't mean that fires are any less important, and we just need to keep that in mind. The more people get educated about signs and symptoms of strokes, heart attacks, whatever it may be, they call 911 more. In 1980, people didn't know what a stroke, necessarily what the stroke signs and symptoms were, or what a heart attack was. Now they utilize the 911 system, and that's a good thing. The survival rates are through the roof, and we're glad to partner, with the hospitals in getting that out and providing care. With all that being said, we, from the firefighters, would like to wish the community a Merry Christmas, and again, please stop by our station anytime if you have any questions or concerns.
Thank you.
Dean Smith, Riverdale. On the motion to levy the mills, the 2-year mills, I would hope, A, it would be, the police would be separate, 1.65, and then the fire department at whatever mills they're asking for. Because, Mr. Verkes, I think you did say they're two completely different units in this township. You can't compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So why don't we just put the police, ask for their renewal rate or levies, the mills, and then we'll just ask for the fire department and see how that passes. So if one doesn't pass, we can, at least one did and one didn't, so we can at least have something. Because I think the fire mills are just, my personal opinion, just outrageous. 20% of my tax bill goes for the fire department. It's beyond belief. And if 5% of my tax goes to the police, I just think my bang for the buck isn't there. So if you would please try to put the police on a separate line, yes or no, vote yes or yay or nay or wherever you do it, and it's separate for the police, that'd be great. Muchly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Sunstock, 31698 San Juan. I've got several items that I wanted to address that I wasn't able to completely talk about during the course of the meeting. I'll start out by dealing with the coastal grant application. While I respect the fact, Mr. Brado, that you have been or are in advertising, I've also been in purchasing for a long time, and I dealt with the same kind of people we're talking about here. So I think you're wrong, but the board decided to go with you. As far as the fire department millage, I agree that it should be split. It should be split between a base amount that covers the current fire department activities, and then an additional amount to get up to the 30. I think you're trying to hold the residents hostage to this thing, and I think it's a dumb strategy, and it's not going to work. I'd like to also basically say to the firemen, while it may sound like I'm 100% against the firemen, I'm not. The fact of the matter is that I was fully expecting that the committee would bring in the MedStar people and have them explain what they proposed that they could do versus what our fire department can do. I know our fire department does a good job with the ALS. I wanted to see what the MedStar people could do. And maybe they would have said, well, we can't match your fire department. I expect the fire department people to say, we're the best, we're the greatest, we do the best job. I expect that. I not only expect it, I want them to be saying that. I want them to believe that, but I also want to see what is really, whether or not we're getting a good deal. And I was extremely disappointed with that fire department committee for not bringing the MedStar people in and having them talk to us and make a presentation. I think we missed a whole part of the pie that would have been could have easily made the case that, hey, we're great with what we have. And I would admit that. I also will admit that Mr. Batani did say, when that gentleman made the comment that, let's just pass a tax increase and let's get done with this thing. And basically, I do agree, you stood forward and said something. Also, Mr. Swadesh said something. But I also want to make sure that everybody understands, it said I wasn't at those meetings. If anybody wants to see all the paperwork from every one of those meetings, I kept it. So you know what? When I say something, I cover my ass, and I know I was there. I have the paperwork to prove it. So if you want to bring your lawyer out, have him come. Lastly, you were talking about the new person to be our finance person. I've looked at both resumes, and it's clear that the one gentleman that wasn't going to be considered clearly has better credentials. He's a CPA, he's an MPA, he's had 24 years of experience in the cities, different cities, several years at a time. And this other guy has been there at Warren for, 30 years? That's not what I call a go-getter. But then the real question I have is, I would like to hear whether or not the gentleman that you were proposing tonight has any connection to any one of you people on the board. I believe there is some connections. I believe they should have been brought forward to the citizens. If they're not brought forward at the next meeting, they will be brought forward. Lastly, I would ask that the meeting that you're going to do, the special meeting, that it be televised. Recorded and televised for the citizens so they can see what the heck's going on. So if you need to make a motion to that effect, I suggest you do that right now. Or if you could just go ahead and do it, that's fine too. It's a special meeting, and it deserves to be televised so the citizens can watch it. And with that, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I'd like to wish the fire department a Merry Christmas. And we'll hopefully next year we can get off to a much smoother start. Thank you.
Bill Serville, resident. I agree with Mr. Senstock on most of everything he said, especially with the millages. I believe that you need to hedge your bets by going for a renewal on the fire. You could go for renewal on I don't think that the police is an issue. By the way, I got those numbers from your own budget. It shows that you're spending $255,000 more in 2016 than you spent in 15.
That's to date, I think, maybe.
But that's beside the point. Maybe I don't know how to read a budget. But at any rate, in 2012, I took it upon myself to talk to the CEO of MedStar. They have all levels of services. They do have EMTs that are level 1. They have ones that are higher level. You pay for what, as you pointed out, Mr. Verkest, they will put ambulances in your community for free. But if you want to set them out all the time, they may charge you something for that. But you don't know if you haven't talked to them. Maybe we have the best deal. But what I'd look at is this. I love our healthcare system the way it used to be. I like going to the doctor that I want to pick, not one that Mr. Obama tells me I have to go to. But at the same time, healthcare has been going up 2 or 3 times the rate of inflation. It's unsustainable. The fire department millages have been going up, our costs been going up, and despite the fact that there was a dip in our assessed valuations, we know that this millage, if it passes, is never going to be rolled back from 8.2, and eventually there'll be 20% more money because the rates will rebound. And you're forgetting there's another boom here. There's a mini building boom. In Brigantine Estates is being totally built out for one. Those houses are coming online at higher rates. They're gonna bring in more money and not a whole lot more for the fire department to do. I agree that this community is a bugger to cover. We have blockades everywhere you look. We got the freeway, we got the spillway, we got the lake, we got Selfridge. And you have two fire departments that are only a mile apart. Probably shouldn't have built the one on Jefferson, that's water under the bridge now. We have what we have. I do believe the fire department does an excellent job. We just have to try to control the cost somehow. And you have to start thinking outside the box to do that. But what I heard up here was really disturbing. A firefighter said that, if I understood him, that they're not gonna be able to do runs for the next 5 days. I assume that's because personnel aren't there. Now, the question begs is if you have 25 members, and by Mr. Verkest's statement, we have 9 supervisory, that leaves 16 members that are considered firefighters. If you can only field 2 firefighters when you have 16 on staff, maybe they have too much time off. I don't know. What is the issue? I'd like to hear what the issue is, why they can't respond properly. I will say this, when I talked to MedStar, at that time, they had 69 ambulances. There's many times we have 2 ambulances. Once those are both in service, they have to call on MedStar anyway. But I'd like to also know, it's been about 2 years since there was first talk about having a fire district with 3 other communities, which, by the way, all 3 of those, if I'm not mistaken, use MedStar. We are the only one that transport, that only has fire-based EMS of the 4 communities. So what is going to happen with that? Is it dead in the water, or is it still moving forward slowly? If it does come to fruition, what does that do with a 20-year payback to the township? Is that gonna be paid out of the fire district? How's that gonna work? You know, go back to this 15,000. I said before, that's like a minimum payment on a credit card. It's ridiculous to ask for only 15,000 back, especially if you're gonna have $500,000 extra dollars next year if this millage does pass. They can pay the money back in 2 or 3 years. So, with that said, I'll say like everyone else, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. God bless.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. One of the residents had asked for a separate vote of police and fire. The board has already proposed that we wouldn't do that. Yeah, we've already made that decision. The reason is because none of us are sitting here anticipating that the police millage won't pass. I don't think anyone's had any legitimate discussion about the police millage. If that millage doesn't pass, it'll be because the voters are not comfortable with the fire millage. And so separating it just adds additional questions. There was also discussion about separating 2 different levels of the fire millage. And the problem with that is you have to pick at least one level where you can say we can provide this level of service. So unless we have a number, going to the voters with this, we need to be able to say this millage rate provides this level of service. So saying we're currently at 25, we've been historically at 27, we'd like you to give us this increase so we can lower the amount to 24, just doesn't resonate with voters saying, well, why are you lowering the fund to 24 and you're asking for an increase? So we need to have a number that puts us at 27. One of the residents asked if there's a relationship that either of these applicants have with board members. I believe that I understand what he's referring to, and I think now I understand what Mr. York was referring to earlier when he was whispering to me. The candidate who comes from the city of Warren was a parent at the high school for probably 3 of the years that my kids went, and we used to volunteer probably once a month on a Sunday to work bingo for the band boosters. During that time, I learned that he worked for the city of Warren in the finance department. I also happen to know that because he did the tax returns. 501c3s have to do a 990 return. So he prepares the return for the Lance Cruz High School band boosters. So I was aware that he did that. Knowing that we had this opening and the amount of applicants were limited, I reached out to him to say either A, was he interested, or did he know of a worthy candidate, which led to a conversation, which led to him applying for the position. He's not a friend of mine, he's not a relative of mine, we don't see each other. I probably, prior to him coming in to interview for this, I probably haven't seen him in, well, his son graduated in 2011, so I probably haven't seen him since 2011. So during my time as a supervisor, I have probably not physically interacted with the man. But I do know him, and I'm not throwing Frank under the bus, but Frank's kid was in the band too, and I'm assuming Frank knows Dennis.
I do know Dennis, and our kids played baseball together, so other than that, I haven't spoken to Dennis at least 5 years,
Right.
5 or 6 years.
Right. So I wouldn't consider that a relationship or something that I feel the need to reveal, but obviously others might feel that way, so I'm certainly content in making that point. There was a discussion about a building boom in Harrison Township. We're at $858 million in taxable value. If we built 28 homes that went for a price of $300,000, assuming that's additional cost, not the cost of the lot already has value. But if you improved 28 home sites by increasing the value at $300,000, that's $8.5 million. But only half of that counts. So you'd have to build 56 homes that are worth $350,000 in order to see a 1% increase in our taxable value. So as much as I would love to see that, and I encourage that development and encourage folks to build out the township, 1% isn't going to fill a 16% hole. Again, comment was made about how many firefighters we have. We have 3 platoons. One has 9 and the other 2 have 8. When there's 8 on duty, all 8 respond. There isn't a scenario where only some of them, or where 5 guys sit back in the station and send 3 guys out, and if that isn't enough, then we're out of luck. Every one of our firefighters, whether they're command officers or firefighters as their rank, and all steps in between, respond to whatever calls come in. There was a question asked about the fire authority. Is it dead? No, it isn't dead. The fire authority was ultimately, the ultimate deliverable for the fire authority was to hire a firm to provide a study and a series of recommendations for the potential of a merger or a sharing of services, and also an analysis of the existing services. They had a preliminary report, I'm not for sure, but I'm going to say it was in October. Maybe it was September, I don't really remember. It was a whole series of feedback from all the communities. They felt that the report seemed to be rushed. We gave them feedback. Now they're coming back with their second draft of their document. So, and frankly, I know it was said, well, it's going to happen by October or November. It's a pretty in-depth study. How does it affect a 20-year payback? I can tell you that a 20-year payback of a $300,000 loan is the least of those problems. We're going from Sterling Heights, Clinton Township, Mount Clemens, Harrison Township. We've got varying levels of age of equipment. We've got varying levels of millage rates, contracts. A $300,000 loan from the general fund to the fire fund is not an issue. It would be likely that we'd have to square up some bigger issues. How well funded is one community's pension fund compared to another? That's a multi-million-dollar question, not a $300,000 question. 3 of the 4 communities use MedStar. Absolutely true. The preliminary report was that, and it was part of what led to some of the discussion at the fire assessment committee, was that the folks who did the EMS transport portion of that, in terms of asking questions, said that it's highly likely that when this is done, because of the geographic conditions and the ability to draw from a 360-degree radius, it's likely that that authority may continue to provide transport only in one area, such as Harrison Township, but not necessarily in the other areas. So the fire experts that came from multiple places all over the country working for Tri-Data already told us one of the things that the Fire Services Committee came up with, and that an authority wouldn't necessarily require that we have all transport or no transport. There could be regions of the fire authority or district that could have transport. So I think that was the end of the comments. And like everyone else, Merry Christmas.
So I do have just one comment. I certainly hope that we don't start a fear campaign regarding this millage. And after reading the paper this morning, like Mr. Verkast said, we have 8 people. That's how many people we have on shift. You know, right in the paper this morning, it started, I'm not gonna say who said it, but I'm gonna say, it said there are currently 6 firefighters on duty per shift. To be most effective, there should be at least 8 per shift. There are times on a daily basis when we have no units. That would be correct, but the township pays for 8 people. Let's be really clear about that. Every day, the township pays for 8 people. If 6 people or 5 people show up on shift, well, shame on us as managers that we allow that to happen.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I
Us
didn't
as-
say that. I
us-
didn't say that.
I'm
I think,
just-
I think you're
I'm just saying-
misquoting me there, Mr.
I'm not
Mr.
misquoting you at all. That was
Can-
not,
can
Ken,
you-
Ken, that was not you who said that quote.
Okay, you just said I said that.
I did
I
not.
don't think he did.
I did not, Ken.
Sorry.
I did not say that. I said I wasn't gonna mention you said it.
I'm
I
sorry.
said Mr. Verkest just said earlier that we have 8 people on shift.
Right.
And so I was pointing out that according to this person, that we only have 6 firefighters on duty.
I apologize. I thought you were
So
saying that
so I
I
was
said that.
pointing out that we in fact do pay 8 people, but 6 people on shift, and please don't start this fear campaign. And that we have to, as managers, accept some of that responsibility and maybe do a better job of getting more men to work that the citizens are actually paying for, is my point.
Well, we reduced personal
Right,
days
no,
and sick
well,
days.
no,
I mean,
I
that's
understand. I'm
part of the
just-
reason why guys don't show
I'm,
up.
I'm just saying, whenever we have these millage things, you know, we always start with this little bit of a fear campaign.
I don't. You're the one that brought it
I'm
up.
I'm not saying you.
I think the biggest motivation for me as a board member of putting it
Yes.
on is March is so we don't have that gun to the head kind of vote to the
No,
people.
I just, you know, I hate fear campaigns. So anyhow, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Between the days of the 23rd, I believe is the last day we work,
Yes.
and January 3rd, I believe. Anybody, you can put your payment in the Dropbox, no problem, you can pay online. They'll be processed when we get back, but the, you know, IRS takes that, it's no big issue. And for those that wanna pay in person, you have to have your bill and a receipt and take it to the Chase Bank over on Harper, but I'll have a note on the door as well, and on our website, so, for that information. Only during that Christmas time that we're closed. So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Any other board comments?
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and go green.
Go white.
Go
Be
blue.
looking for a motion to
And green.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Guess I should have done the roll call. I figured you let it slide.